ほら、ルフィ、今一緒に海賊になる仲間を探してるんだ。
Hello guys, welcome to my channel The Wandering Zoro, your go-to destination for anime-related content. And if you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest videos. In today's video, we're going to be diving into part 2 of the series What If Quirkless Deku Became Genius Scientist? So be sure to stick around until the end, and let's get started. Izuku's first official class at UA was, as expected, a one-on-one session with Principal Nizu in the surprisingly cozy Class 1X homeroom. The room had been subtly rearranged overnight, with a large whiteboard now dominating one wall and various scientific models and diagrams scattered across a sturdy work table. Nizu, perched on a high stool behind the teacher's desk, beamed at Izuku. "Good morning, Midoriya-kun. I trust your first night in the Class 1X dorm was conducive to optimal rest and cognitive function?" "Indeed, Principal Nizu," Izuku replied, placing his notebooks on the desk. The environmental parameters were within acceptable ranges, and the absence of external auditory disturbances facilitated uninterrupted periods of intellectual consolidation. Nizu chuckled. "Excellent. Today, we shall begin our exploration of, well, just about anything that piques your considerable intellect. Think of this as an accelerated, highly personalized curriculum tailored to your unique aspirations. We can delve into advanced theoretical physics one moment, explore the intricacies of bioengineering the next, and perhaps even debate the ethical implications of artificial intelligence." And so, the class commenced. It was unlike any educational experience Izuku had ever imagined. Nizu's teaching style was dynamic and engaging, seamlessly weaving together complex concepts from disparate fields. He challenged Izuku with thought-provoking questions, encouraged him to formulate his own hypotheses, and provided him with access to a wealth of resources, both physical and digital. Izuku found himself discussing the space-time continuum, the principles of genetic manipulation, and the societal impact of technological singularity, all within the span of a single morning. Nizu was not merely imparting knowledge. He was fostering Izuku's intellectual curiosity and encouraging him to think beyond conventional boundaries. He recognized the young scientist's potential to reshape the world and seemed genuinely invested in nurturing that potential. As the morning drew to a close, Nizu hopped off his stool, a thoughtful expression on his face. "Now, Midoriya-kun, let's talk about the upcoming UA Sports Festival. It is a significant event for all students, a showcase of their abilities, and a crucial opportunity for future recognition." Izuku frowned slightly. "With all due respect, Principal Nizu, the sports festival appears to be primarily geared towards heroic students, a display of their quirks and combat prowess. My focus lies elsewhere." Nizu's smile widened. "Precisely. And that, my dear Midoriya-kun, is where your unique challenge lies. For the next 6 weeks, your primary project will be to conceive, design, and, to the best of your ability, construct an apparatus or utilize a scientific principle that will allow you to participate effectively, and perhaps even excel, in the various events of the sports festival." Izuku's eyes widened slightly. This was an unexpected but intriguing proposition. A scientific challenge disguised as a sporting event. "You wish for me to engineer a solution to the physical demands of the sports festival?" Izuku asked, his mind already beginning to whir with possibilities. "Indeed," Nizu chirped. "Consider it an exercise in applied science and creative problem-solving. You are not limited by the constraints of inherent abilities. Your only limit is your own ingenuity. Surprise us, Midoriya-kun. Show the world the power of human intellect." With a newfound sense of purpose, Izuku retreated to his lab after his session with Nizu. He spent the afternoon immersed in research, sketching furiously in his notebooks, and experimenting with various salvage components. The challenge of the sports festival, initially a source of indifference, had become a fascinating scientific puzzle to be solved. By the end of the day, a preliminary design had taken shape. It was a heavily armored, bipedal exoskeleton, far more robust and weaponized than his entrance exam gear. His plans detailed integrated homing missile launchers in the shoulder pauldrons, retractable rocket boosters for enhanced mobility, and a fearsome multi-barreled chain gun mounted on one of the articulated arms. The design prioritized firepower, protection, and maneuverability, a scientific approach to overcoming physical limitations. He presented his initial schematics to Nizu the following morning. The principal's eyes gleamed with excitement as he examined the intricate details. "Magnificent, Midoriya-kun," Nizu exclaimed, tapping a diagram of the chain gun with a paw. "Truly magnificent. A bold and innovative approach. The heroics department will be most intrigued." Meanwhile, the students of Class 1A had been buzzing with curiosity about the enigmatic Class 1X student. They had heard rumors of his advanced intellect and his unconventional aspirations, and their encounter in the common room had only deepened their intrigue. During lunch break, a small delegation, Kirishima, Yaoyorozu, Ashido, Kaminari, and Siro, decided to seek out Izuku and learn more about his mysterious endeavors. They found him at a secluded table in the bustling cafeteria, surrounded by blueprints and scientific journals, muttering to himself as he refined his exoskeleton designs. "Hey, Midoriya," Kirishima called out, approaching the table with a friendly grin. "What you working on?" Izuku looked up, a slight frown creasing his brow at the interruption. "I am currently engaged in the preliminary design phase of a project for the upcoming sports festival, as assigned by Principal Nizu." "Sports festival?" Ashido's eyes widened. "But you're not in the hero course. What are you going to do?" Izuku gestured to the sprawling blueprints. "I intend to participate scientifically." He spread out the schematics, revealing the imposing figure of his armored exoskeleton, complete with its array of weaponry. The heroics students stared at the design in a mixture of awe and disbelief. Wo Kaminari breathed. "That's intense. What is it?" "It is a multifunctional, heavily armored exoskeleton designed to enhance physical capabilities and provide a strategic advantage in various competitive scenarios," Izuku explained, pointing to the different features. "Integrated homing missile system for long-range target acquisition, rocket propulsion units for rapid traversal and aerial maneuvers, and a high-velocity rotary kinetic energy projector, what you might colloquially refer to as a chain gun, for close-quarters engagement." Yaoyorozu's eyes widened in admiration. "The level of detail in these schematics is remarkable, Midoriya-san. The power source, the articulation of the joints, it's all incredibly sophisticated. Efficiency and functionality are paramount," Izuku stated matter-of-factly. "Unnecessary ornamentation or inefficient design elements have been eliminated." As the Class 1A students continued to examine the blueprints with fascination, a shrill, accusatory voice cut through the cafeteria clamor. "There he is. The cheater." Uraraka, flanked by a couple of her Gen Ed classmates, stormed towards Izuku's table, her face a mask of fury. "You," she shrieked, pointing a finger at Izuku. "You still haven't given back my points. You don't deserve to be here. You probably built some kind of illegal weapon." She gestured wildly at the blueprints. "See, I knew it. He's going to cheat in the sports festival too." The Class 1A students bristled, stepping protectively in front of Izuku. "Lay off him, Uraraka," Kirishima growled, his hardening quirk activating. "Slightly. He hasn't done anything to you." "Yeah," Ashido chimed in, her hands emitting a faint acidic vapor. "Why are you always picking on him?" Uraraka ignored them, her gaze fixated on Izuku. "You think you're so smart, huh? With your fancy gadgets. You're just a quirkless nobody trying to show off." Izuku sighed, a familiar wave of exasperation washing over him. "Your continued emotional outbursts and baseless accusations are unproductive, Uraraka-san. My participation in the sports festival is sanctioned by the principal, and my designs adhere to the established guidelines. Furthermore, your persistent fixation on a perceived injustice from the entrance exam demonstrates a significant lack of focus on your current academic pursuits." "Oh, I'm lacking focus?" Uraraka retorted, her voice rising in pitch. "You're the one building weapons in the middle of the cafeteria." Suddenly, a figure materialized beside Uraraka, his capture weapon snaking around her torso with swift precision. Aizawa's tired eyes glared down at her. "That's enough, Uraraka," he drawled, his voice dangerously low. "Your incessant disruptions have become a distraction. You have detention for the rest of the afternoon." Uraraka struggled against his capture weapon, her protests growing increasingly frantic. But he dash. Aizawa simply tightened his grip and began to drag her away. "Not another word." As Uraraka was hauled out of the cafeteria, still yelling about stolen points and unfair advantages, a stunned silence fell over Izuku's table. "Whoa," Kaminari said finally, breaking the silence. "She's really got it in for you, huh?" Izuku simply shrugged, returning his attention to his blueprints. Her persistent irrationality presents an interesting case study in cognitive bias and emotional regulation. The Class 1A students exchanged bewildered glances. They were beginning to realize that Izuku Midoriya operated on a completely different wavelength. He wasn't concerned with petty squabbles or emotional outbursts. His focus remained firmly on logic, efficiency, and the pursuit of scientific advancement. The sports festival was not a stage for heroic glory in his eyes, but a challenge to be overcome with intellect and ingenuity. And his heavily armed exoskeleton was just the first step in his scientifically engineered path to victory. The Age of Heroes might be focused on quirks, but Izuku was determined to prove that human intellect was a force to be reckoned with, a force that could not only compete, but potentially surpass the limitations of mere genetic lottery. A week had passed since Izuku unveiled his initial exoskeleton designs to Class 1A. He had been diligently working in his lab, refining the blueprints and constructing a functional, albeit somewhat fragile and underpowered, prototype of the armor and its weaponry. The homing missiles were little more than glorified firecrackers with rudimentary guidance systems. The rockets produced more smoke than thrust, and the chain gun fired a pathetic stream of oversized metal pellets. It was a far cry from his ambitious vision, but a crucial first step in the iterative process of scientific development. Then came an unexpected announcement from Principal Nizu. Class 1X would be joining Class 1A for a field trip to the unforeseen simulation joint USJ, a state-of-the-art training facility designed for various rescue scenarios. Nizu's reasoning was characteristically cryptic, something about broadening perspectives and unforeseen learning opportunities. Izuku suspected the principal had his own unique pedagogical agenda. The bus ride to the USJ was lively. The heroic students were a boisterous bunch, their conversations filled with excited anticipation about the training exercise. Izuku, seated beside Shinso, found himself the subject of curious inquiries about his giant robot project. "So, Midoriya," Kirishima asked, leaning over the seat, "that armor you're building, is it gonna help you with, like, the rescue stuff too?" Its primary design parameters are geared towards competitive scenarios involving simulated combat, Izuku explained, adjusting his makeshift smart glasses, a clunky prototype that projected holographic displays onto the lenses. However, the principles of enhanced mobility and structural reinforcement could, theoretically, be adapted for rescue operations in hazardous environments. "Smart glasses, huh?" Mina chimed in, her antennae twitching with interest. "What can those do?" Izuku tapped the side of his glasses. Currently, this prototype integrates functionalities similar to a cellular communication device, a portable data processing unit, and a rudimentary virtual reality interface. "I am also in the preliminary stages of developing optical sensors for enhanced environmental analysis and real-time threat assessment." He dumbed down his explanation slightly. "Basically, it's like a phone and VR goggles, but as glasses." "Whoa, that's so cool," Kaminari exclaimed, his eyes wide. "Can it play games?" "Theoretically, yes," Izuku replied dryly. "However, my current priorities lie in more scientifically rigorous applications." He then elaborated on some of his other ongoing research projects, including preliminary designs for a self-contained life support system for long-duration space travel and theoretical frameworks for the construction of a space elevator or skyhook, a concept that fascinated several of the students. He explained the basic principles of orbital mechanics and tensile strength in simplified terms for Mina and Kaminari, who listened with surprisingly rapt attention. Upon arriving at the USJ, the students were greeted by the Space Hero 13, who was to oversee their rescue training. However, their lesson was abruptly interrupted by the appearance of a swirling black vortex in the center of the facility, from which a horde of villains emerged. The Warp Gate villain, Hirojiri, introduced himself and the League of Villains, their ominous presence immediately putting everyone on high alert. Hirojiri's quirk activated, teleporting most of Class 1A to various zones within the USJ, separating them into smaller groups. Aizawa, displaying his formidable combat skills, immediately engaged the remaining villains, his capture weapon lashing out with practiced precision. Izuku, who had been standing slightly apart, was not teleported. He watched as Aizawa expertly neutralized multiple opponents. However, a hulking, grotesque creature with exposed muscle tissue and multiple scars, the Nomu, lumbered into the central plaza, its presence radiating an unnatural power. It moved with terrifying speed, targeting Aizawa. Before anyone could react, Izuku, his mind processing the threat with lightning speed, activated his prototype exoskeleton. It whirred and clanked as it deployed around him, the bulky armor feeling surprisingly restrictive. Ignoring its limitations, he targeted the Nomu's exposed arms with his prototype chain gun. A stream of oversized metal pellets, far less powerful than he had envisioned, slammed into the Nomu's limbs. To everyone's shock, the creature's arms were severed, falling to the ground with a wet thud. However, even more shockingly, the Nomu's severed limbs began to twitch and regenerate at an alarming rate. Shigaraki Tamura, the leader of the villains, his face covered in severed hands, spoke, his voice raspy and filled with malice. Hero society, a festering wound that needs to be excised. A corrupt system built on lies and false idols. To the astonishment of Class 1A and the villains alike, Izuku spoke, his voice surprisingly calm amidst the chaos. I concur with your assessment of the systemic flaws within Hero society, Shigaraki Tamura. Shigaraki's red eyes widened in surprise, his scratching fingers pausing. You agree? The over-reliance on quirks has led to societal stagnation and a neglect of fundamental human potential, Izuku continued, his gaze fixed on Shigaraki. However, I do not believe outright destruction is the optimal solution. Progress requires innovation and a willingness to challenge existing paradigms, not simply obliterate them. He gestured towards the regenerating Nomu. Your methods are crude and lack scientific rigor. True change requires a more nuanced approach. Nuanced? Shigaraki scoffed. All Might represents everything that's wrong with this world. He needs to die? Symbolism is a powerful tool, but its efficacy is limited by the underlying reality, Izuku countered. Addressing the root causes of societal discontent requires understanding and strategic intervention, not merely the removal of a figurehead. He turned his attention back to Shigaraki. Tell me, Shigaraki Tamura, what events transpired to lead you down this path? What grievances fuel your desire for destruction? Shigaraki hesitated, his scratching resuming slowly. He recounted his tragic past, the neglect, the pain, and the arrival of his sensei who had shown him the truth of the world's cruelty. Izuku listened intently, his analytical mind piecing together the fragmented narrative. And your sensei, did he ever offer you guidance beyond simply highlighting the negative aspects of society? Did he help you process your trauma? Did he train you to utilize your quirk for constructive purposes? Shigaraki paused, his red eyes unfocused as he seemed to consider Izuku's questions for the first time. A flicker of realization crossed his face. His sensei had only nurtured his anger and resentment, never offering a path towards healing or genuine empowerment. Can someone like me still be a hero? Shigaraki whispered, the question laced with a vulnerability that surprised everyone present. A warm, genuine smile spread across Izuku's face, a smile that held none of his usual scientific detachment. It was a smile of genuine empathy and understanding. Tamura Shigaraki, I believe everyone possesses the potential for change. I can speak with Principal Nizu about establishing a villain rehabilitation program here at UA. A structured environment for understanding the root causes of villainous behavior and developing pathways towards reintegration into society. Shigaraki stared at Izuku, his scratching stopping completely. A strange sense of safety washed over him, a feeling he hadn't experienced in years. He turned to the monstrous Nomu. Nomu, knock yourself out. To everyone's astonishment, the Nomu, as if obeying a direct command, slammed its regenerating head into the ground with tremendous force, rendering itself unconscious. Just then, Hirojiri reappeared, his swirling vortex materializing beside Shigaraki. Shigaraki Tamura, we must retreat. Shigaraki, his gaze still fixed on Izuku, shook his head. No, Hirojiri. Turn around. Hirojiri hesitated, seemingly confused by the unexpected command. When he finally turned his back, Izuku, seizing the opportunity, launched the prototype homing missiles from his exoskeleton's shoulder pauldrons. With a pathetic whiz and a small puff of smoke, the miniature projectiles slammed into Kurogiri's swirling form. The warp gate villain sputtered and collapsed, his portal dissipating. "I surrender," Shigaraki said, his voice surprisingly calm. Moments later, the pro-heroes arrived, alerted by the students' distress signals. The scene that greeted them was perplexing. Aizawa was bruised but conscious. The Nomu was unconscious. Kurogiri was incapacitated, and Shigaraki stood with his hands raised in surrender, a strange, almost hopeful expression on his face, talking calmly with the quirkless student in the clunky prototype armor. Izuku quickly explained the unprecedented turn of events to a bewildered Nizu, who arrived shortly after. He detailed his conversation with Shigaraki and his proposal for a villain rehabilitation program at UA. To everyone's surprise, Nizu, after a moment of thoughtful silence, agreed. "Midoriya-kun," he said, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of intrigue and approval, "your unconventional approach has yielded unexpected results. A villain rehabilitation program, a fascinating hypothesis. Let us explore its potential." The first participant in this groundbreaking program was, of course, Tomura Shigaraki, who, for the first time in a long time, felt a flicker of hope amidst the darkness that had consumed him. The Age of Heroes had faced a terrifying threat, but in its midst, the Age of Science had offered an alternative, a chance for understanding and perhaps even redemption. The implications were staggering, and the future of hero society had just taken a very unexpected turn, all thanks to the quirkless boy in the prototype armor with a knack for both scientific innovation and surprisingly effective de-escalation. Following the chaotic events at the USJ, Nizu granted the students of classes 1A and 1X 2 days of respite. Izuku utilized this time in his characteristic manner, a blend of social observation and intense scientific endeavor. He visited the 1A dorm common room on a couple of occasions, engaging in surprisingly normal conversations with his classmates. He found himself explaining complex scientific concepts in layman's terms, even cracking a few admittedly dry jokes that occasionally elicited genuine laughter. He also ventured out onto the UA campus a few times, his keen eyes observing the layout and infrastructure, always analyzing potential applications for his scientific pursuits. However, the majority of his time was spent in his lab, tirelessly working on his sports festival armor. He had christened it the XS-1 Goliath, a name that hinted at its intended size and power. The prototype had revealed numerous design flaws and material weaknesses. He was now focusing on a more robust frame, utilizing advanced alloys he had painstakingly sourced from salvaged materials, and refining the weapon systems. The homing missiles were being redesigned for greater accuracy and explosive yield. The rocket boosters were undergoing modifications for increased thrust and control, and the chain gun was being upgraded to fire-hardened projectiles at a significantly higher rate. When the first day back at UA arrived, Izuku spent the morning in another intensive session with Nizu. They discussed the implications of the USJ incident, the potential of his villain rehabilitation program, and the ethical considerations of his rapidly evolving sports festival project. Nizu, as always, was a fountain of insightful questions and unconventional perspectives. Izuku also dedicated a portion of his morning to practical experimentation, testing various chemical reactions in his lab, the faint scent of ozone and other byproducts occasionally wafting into the hallway. By lunchtime, Izuku decided to head to the 1A dorms to eat with his classmates. As he approached their common room, however, he found an unexpected scene unfolding. A throng of students from other classes had gathered outside the doorway, creating a bottleneck. Voices were raised in heated debate. He recognized a boisterous student with sharp teeth from Class 1B yelling, "It's not fair. Class 1A always gets all the attention. They barely survived a villain attack, and everyone's fawning over them." Amidst the crowd, Izuku also spotted several general education students, their expressions a mix of resentment and curiosity. Uraraka was among them, her voice shrill with indignation. "They don't deserve to be in the hero course. That green-haired weirdo probably made a deal with the villains." Izuku sighed inwardly. The aftermath of the USJ incident had clearly stirred up inter-class tensions and fueled Uraraka's irrational animosity. he decided to intervene. Stepping through the crowded doorway, his tall frame easily towering over most of the other students, Izuku addressed the Class 1B student. With all due respect, your assessment of the situation is inaccurate. Class 1A was, indeed, subjected to an unforeseen and dangerous encounter. However, their survival was not solely attributed to their individual strengths. Furthermore, he turned his gaze towards the general education students. The villains present at the USJ were demonstrably not operating at optimal capacity. There were indications of internal conflict and external manipulation that significantly impacted their strategic cohesion. He paused, his gaze settling on Uraraka. As for your baseless accusations, Uraraka-san, they are entirely without merit and continue to detract from productive discourse. Uraraka's face flushed crimson. See, he's acting all superior again. He probably let the villains go on purpose. Before anyone could react, Aizawa's capture weapon shot out from the 1A common room, binding Uraraka with swift efficiency. His tired voice echoed from within. That's the third disruptive outburst this week, Uraraka. You're suspended for 3 days. Consider it an opportunity for self-reflection. He then glared at the assembled crowd. The rest of you move along. Class 1A needs their lunch in peace. As Aizawa dragged a struggling Uraraka away, the other students, sensing his displeasure, quickly dispersed. Izuku stepped into the 1A common room, finding his classmates looking slightly bewildered by his intervention. Thanks, Midoriya, Kirishima said, scratching the back of his head. You kinda took the wind out of their sails. Accurate information dissemination can often mitigate unnecessary conflict, Izuku replied, taking a seat at the table. The situation at the USJ was complex and not easily reducible to simplistic narratives of heroic triumph. Later that afternoon, as Izuku was working in his lab, a hesitant knock echoed on his door. He opened it to find a small group of general education students standing in the hallway, their expressions a mix of nervousness and curiosity. Midoriya-san? One of them, a girl with short brown hair, began hesitantly. We heard what you said at the orientation, and well, some of us have been thinking about that Class 1X you're in. Indeed, Izuku replied, raising an eyebrow. Your interest is unexpected, given the prevailing emphasis on heroics. Another student, a boy with glasses, spoke up. We were wondering what exactly do you guys do in Class 1X? It sounds different. Izuku gestured for them to enter his lab. Their eyes widened as they took in the array of equipment, the diagrams on the walls, and the faint smell of chemicals. Class 1X is a specialized program focused on the advanced study of applied sciences and engineering, Izuku explained, gesturing around the lab. Our curriculum encompasses a broad range of disciplines, including advanced physics, chemistry, robotics, materials science, and the legal and ethical frameworks governing scientific innovation. He showed them some of his ongoing projects, including the miniaturized fusion reactor model he was tinkering with, and the early prototypes of his smart glasses. He explained the underlying scientific principles in accessible language, highlighting the potential applications of their research. He then led them on a brief tour of the Class 1X dorm building, showing them the well-equipped laboratory spaces and the individual research suites. Our objective is not to develop flashy quirks or engage in direct combat, Izuku continued. We aim to understand the fundamental laws of the universe and to apply that knowledge to create technologies and solutions that can benefit society on a systemic level. We seek to push the boundaries of human capability through intellect and innovation, not through inherent biological advantages. He paused, looking at the group of intrigued Gen Ed students. So, in summary, we look at the laws that nature has given us and say, thanks for the suggestions, but we got this. The students exchanged impressed glances. Izuku's passion for science and his ambitious vision were undeniably compelling. So you're basically trying to make humans better without quirks? The brown-haired girl asked. To transcend the limitations imposed by our current biological state through the application of scientific understanding, Izuku clarified. To reclaim humanity's inherent drive to explore, innovate, and ultimately, to shape our own destiny. The Gen Ed students left Izuku's dorm with a newfound sense of possibility. The world of quirks might be dominant, but the prospect of a future driven by scientific ingenuity, a future where intellect was the ultimate superpower, was undeniably alluring. The seeds of recruitment for Class 1X had been sown, and Izuku Midoriya, the lone pioneer, might soon find himself with company in his quest to usher in the age of science. The sterile white walls of the Class 1X waiting room hummed with a quiet energy, a stark contrast to the roaring anticipation that Izuku could feel vibrating through the very foundations of the stadium outside. He stood calmly amidst his meticulously organized equipment, the pauper's backpack resting securely on his shoulders, its four articulated arms folded neatly against the main pack. His laser pistols, sleek and metallic, were holstered at his hips, their power cells fully charged. He had foregone the bulkier prototype of the XS-1 Goliath for the initial events, reasoning that agility and adaptability would be more crucial in the obstacle course. The behemoth would have its time to shine later. His mind, as always, was a whirlwind of calculations and strategic considerations. He had analyzed the likely structure of the obstacle course based on previous year's festivals and the known capabilities of UA's training facilities. He had simulated various scenarios, mapping out optimal routes and potential challenges. The pauper's backpack, with its enhanced manipulation capabilities and integrated laser weaponry, offered a unique advantage in navigating obstacles and neutralizing threats. A voice, booming and instantly recognizable, echoed through the waiting room's speakers. "All right, listeners, are you ready for the event of the year? It's time for the UA Sports Festival. Let's hear it for our amazing first-year students, ready to prove their mettle." It was Present Mike, his usual high-octane enthusiasm amplified for the massive audience. A distant roar of cheers erupted from the stadium, a wave of sound that vibrated through Izuku's very bones. He remained impassive, his focus unwavering. This was not merely a sporting event. It was an opportunity to showcase the potential of human ingenuity, a subtle yet significant step in his long-term plan. "Now, let's bring out our classes, one by one," Mike continued, his voice laced with dramatic flair. "First up, the heroes in training, the future of Japan. Give it up for Class 1A." The roar intensified as the students of Class 1A, a mix of nervous excitement and determined resolve on their faces, stepped out into the stadium. Izuku could almost feel their collective ambition radiating from the waiting room. Next, not to be outdone, the tenacious and talented Class 1B. Another wave of cheers greeted the students of Class 1B, their competitive spirit evident in their confident strides. And now, let's hear it for the brilliant minds who support our heroes, the innovative and ingenious students of the support course. A more subdued but equally enthusiastic applause followed the support course students, their unique gadgets and inventions already hinting at their crucial role in the hero world. Following them, the steadfast and knowledgeable students of the general education course. A respectable round of applause greeted the Gen Ed students, a mix of curiosity and perhaps a touch of longing in their expressions as they looked towards the main stage. Izuku noted a few familiar faces, students who had shown interest in Class 1X. And finally, Present Mick's voice took on a slightly different tone, a hint of intrigued curiosity, the pioneering students of UA's newest edition, the groundbreaking and intellectually formidable Class 1X. Izuku took a deep breath, a sense of quiet determination settling over him. This was his stage, his opportunity to make a statement, even before the competition truly began. He walked towards the exit of the waiting room, the pauper's backpack shifting slightly on his shoulders. As he stepped out into the blinding sunlight of the stadium, a hush fell over a significant portion of the crowd. His attire, still the practical lab coat and dark trousers, stood in stark contrast to the colorful hero costumes of the other students. He could feel the weight of thousands of curious gazes upon him. On the elevated stage, Midnight, the R-rated hero, stood with a whip in hand, her usual sultry demeanor tinged with a subtle blush as her eyes met Izuku's. Her fellow teachers, Aizawa and Present Mike among them, exchanged knowing glances and barely suppressed smirks. Midnight had indeed developed a certain appreciation for the intelligent and undeniably handsome sole member of Class 1X. The contrast between his sharp intellect and his somewhat stoic demeanor was, to her, rather captivating. "All right, everyone." Midnight's voice, amplified by the stadium's sound system, cut through the remaining murmurs. Welcome to the first event of the UA Sports Festival. Before we begin, we have a special treat. As you all know, the student who achieved the top score in the rigorous entrance exam will give the opening speech. A wave of excited anticipation rippled through the crowd. The identity of the top scorer had been a closely guarded secret. In that honor, Midnight announced with a flourish, her gaze lingering on Izuku for a moment longer than strictly necessary, causing a fresh wave of teasing glances from her colleagues. Belongs to the sole representative of Class 1X Midora, Izuku. A hush fell over the stadium as Izuku stepped forward, walking towards the designated podium. He could feel the intense scrutiny of the audience, the curious gazes of his fellow students, and the expectant looks of the faculty. This was his moment. He reached the podium and looked out at the vast crowd. He took a slow, deliberate breath and began to speak, his voice clear and carrying through the stadium's sound system, his vocabulary deliberately simplified for broader comprehension. My name is Midoriya Izuku. I am a student of Class 1X, a newly established program focused on the advancement of science and technology. He paused, letting his words sink in. Many of you may wonder why I, someone not pursuing the path of a hero, stand before you today. He continued, his gaze sweeping across the assembled students and the massive audience. Before the widespread emergence of quirks, humanity possessed a different kind of power, the power of knowledge, the power of innovation. We stood on the brink of exploring the cosmos, of understanding the very building blocks of life. We dared to challenge the limitations of our natural world, to bring back creatures lost to time, to reach for the stars. A murmur rippled through the crowd. This was not the typical bombastic declaration of heroic ambition they had expected. But then, Izuku's voice took on a slightly more somber tone, quirks appeared. And in our fascination with these newfound abilities, we forgot. We forgot the inherent human drive to explore, to understand, to break the boundaries of what is deemed possible through intellect and ingenuity. He looked out at the students, his gaze earnest. A part of humanity, a crucial part of our very nature, the relentless pursuit of knowledge and the desire to shape our own destiny, went dormant. We became reliant on the gifts we were given, rather than striving to achieve through our own understanding. He paused again, his voice gaining strength and conviction. I am here today because I believe that spark can be reignited. I am here to remind us of the power that lies not just in our genes, but in our minds. I am here to say that humanity's journey of exploration and innovation is not over. His voice rose slightly, filled with a quiet but unwavering determination. We will once again look nature in the eye, not with the awe of simple acceptance, but with the confidence of understanding. We will once again push the boundaries of the possible. We will once again say humans are back. He concluded, a hint of his usual scientific enthusiasm creeping into his tone, his simplified language still clear and impactful. So, everyone, let's get excited. A moment of stunned silence hung in the air, followed by a wave of confused but intrigued applause. It was an unconventional speech, to say the least, but its earnestness and underlying passion had resonated with many in the audience. Midnight, watching him with a soft smile, found herself even more fascinated. All right, Midnight announced, regaining control of the microphone. Well, that was certainly thought-provoking. Now, let's get to the first event. It's an obstacle course race. The Death Crawl. The massive screen behind her displayed a dynamic layout of the obstacle course, showcasing various treacherous terrains, robotic adversaries, and environmental hazards. The rules are simple. It's a race around the stadium. We've got everything from villain bots to treacherous tightropes. Use your quirks, your skills, and your wits to make it to the finish line. The top students will advance to the next round. Midnight's voice crackled with excitement. As the students made their way to the starting line, Izuku activated his Papa's backpack. The four articulated arms unfolded smoothly, their metallic surfaces gleaming in the sunlight. He also drew his laser pistols, their charged energy cells humming quietly. The starting signal blared, and the students surged forward. Izuku, with his enhanced agility and the manipulative capabilities of his robotic arms, quickly gained ground. The first obstacle was a series of massive, lumbering robots, remnants of UA's combat training exercises. While other students relied on their quirks to evade or destroy the robots, Izuku took a different approach. As he ran, his laser pistols spat out focused beams of energy, disabling the robot's locomotion systems with precise shots. Simultaneously, his 4 robotic arms moved with surprising speed and dexterity, welding the disabled robots together, creating a makeshift, bulky vehicle. He looked around, spotting Shinso, who was relying on his verbal manipulation to try and direct other students out of his way. "Shinso, over here," Izuku yelled, gesturing with one of his robotic arms. Shinso, recognizing Izuku's unconventional strategy, quickly made his way towards him. With surprising agility, he hopped onto the welded mass of robots. "What's the plan?" Shinso asked, a hint of a grin on his face. "We are constructing a mobile platform for efficient traversal," Izuku explained, his robotic arms continuing to weld and reinforce their creation. "Think of it as a rudimentary assault vehicle." As the makeshift vehicle lurched forward, propelled by the still-functioning limbs of some of the robots, Izuku activated a set of small, non-lethal projectile launchers he had integrated into the vehicle's chassis. These fired large, rubber bullets and sticky foam, effectively clearing a path through the other students and any remaining robots. "Man the secondary weapons," Izuku instructed, handing Shinso a pair of control interfaces linked to additional non-lethal projectile launchers mounted on the vehicle. Shinso, a natural strategist, quickly grasped the controls, firing barrages of rubber bullets and sticky foam, further clearing their path and occasionally accidentally hindering the progress of particularly annoying competitors, like a certain explosive blonde. As they approached the second obstacle, a massive chasm known as the Fall, with precarious rock pillars serving as unstable platforms, Izuku didn't hesitate. He focused the energy output of his laser pistols to their maximum non-lethal setting and fired precise beams at the base of the rock pillars. The stone cracked and crumbled, creating a wide, impassable gap for most of the other competitors. Their clunky robotic vehicle, however, was unfazed. Izuku activated small, salvaged anti-gravity plates he had incorporated into the design, allowing their creation to briefly hover over the chasm, carrying them safely to the other side. The third obstacle was a treacherous minefield. While other students cautiously navigated the area, Izuku activated his vehicle's rudimentary scanning system and identified the safe pathways. They sped through the minefield, Shinso occasionally firing non-lethal projectiles at any students who strayed too close to the active mines, creating small, harmless bursts of light and sound. The final stretch was a narrow tunnel. Throughout the race, the robots Izuku had initially disabled had continued to fire their training rounds, non-lethal energy blasts, at the students. As they approached the tunnel entrance, Shinso, with a well-aimed shot from one of the vehicle's projectile launchers, managed to hit a certain explosive blonde student squarely in the groin, causing him to double over in temporary agony. Izuku and Shinso's bizarre, cobbled-together vehicle, a testament to quick thinking and scientific application, rumbled through the tunnel and across the finish line, securing first and second place in the obstacle course race. As the dust settled and the other students straggled in, a mix of disbelief and grudging admiration on their faces, Izuku brought their robotic creation to a halt. He turned to Shinso, a rare, satisfied smirk on his face. "Efficient traversal achieved," Izuku stated. "Yeah," Shinso replied, a genuine grin spreading across his face. "Not bad for a pile of scrap and some laser pointers." Then, a mischievous glint entered Izuku's eyes. He still had a significant amount of non-lethal ammunition left. He turned their robotic vehicle around, aiming its various projectile launchers back towards the minefield and the entrance of the tunnel. "For strategic area denial," Izuku announced, and with a series of rapid-fire commands, he unleashed a final barrage of non-lethal projectiles at the remaining mines and the tunnel entrance, creating a series of harmless but visually spectacular explosions and a minor, temporary blockage at the tunnel. The crowd roared, a mixture of amusement and astonishment at the unconventional tactics displayed by the sole member of Class 1X. The UA Sports Festival had only just begun, and already, Izuku Midoriya was proving that the age of science was not to be underestimated. The 30-minute break between events at the UA Sports Festival was a whirlwind of activity, both inside and outside the stadium. For the students, it was a chance to catch their breath, grab some food, and discuss the unconventional events of the obstacle course race. For the staff, it was a time for analysis, amusement, and a bit of playful teasing. And for the wider world, it was an introduction to the fascinating enigma that was Izuku Midoriya. Izuku, accompanied by Shinso and a small group of Class 1A students Kirishima, Ayurazu, Mina, and a slightly sheepish Kaminari, navigated the crowded food court. He had shed the pauper's backpack, its articulated arms now neatly folded, and carried a tray laden with a meticulously balanced selection of nutrient-rich foods designed to optimize cognitive function and sustained energy release. "Man, Midoriya," Kirishima said, grinning, "that was totally manly. I've never seen anyone use robots like that before." "It was a logical application of available resources," Izuku replied, taking a bite of his carefully calculated meal. The deactivated robots presented a readily available source of materials for rapid construction. The integration of their locomotion systems allowed for efficient traversal of the obstacle course. He paused, noticing the slightly bewildered expressions on his classmates' faces. He adjusted his tone, adopting a more casual vocabulary. "Basically, I used the broken robots to make a car. A really weird car." Mina giggled. "A really weird, awesome car. And those laser guns. You were like, pew pew pew. And then boom. You made a road." The energy discharge from the laser pistols was calibrated to disrupt the robot's control systems without causing significant structural damage, Izuku explained, then simplified. "I shot the robots so they stopped working. Then I made them into a car. Then I blew up the rocks." Kaminari, still slightly dazed from the electric shock he had received during the race, shook his head. "And that thing you said in your speech about humans coming back? What was that all about?" Izuku smiled, a rare, genuine expression that softened his usually stoic features. "Imagine a time when humans weren't limited by what they were born with. We built amazing things, explored space, and even brought back animals that had died out. We were always trying to do things that nature said we couldn't. That's what I want to bring back. That feeling of we can do anything if we put our minds to it." "That's actually really cool," Yaoyorozu said, her eyes widening slightly. "It's a different way of thinking about heroes and everything." Shinso, leaning against a nearby table, nodded in agreement. "He's not wrong. We spend so much time focusing on our quirks that we forget what humans can do on their own." As the students chatted, a few meters away, in the staff room, the UA teachers were having their own, equally animated discussion. Snipe and Vlad King were replaying the footage of the obstacle course race, specifically the moment when Shinso's non-lethal projectile had struck Bakugu in a particularly sensitive area. Both teachers were holding their stomachs, tears streaming down their faces as they watched the explosive blonde double over in pain. "Oh man," Snipe gasped, wiping his eyes. "I haven't laughed this hard in years. That kid has a better aim than I do." "Serves him right," Vlad King chuckled, his voice still hoarse from laughter. "Maybe that'll teach him some humility. For 5 seconds, at least." Other teachers were engaged in more personal conversations. Midnight, her face flushed a permanent shade of pink, was being mercilessly teased by her colleagues. "Oh, come on," Namuri, present Mike teased, draping an arm over her shoulder. "You can't deny it. You've got a little crush on the science whiz, don't you?" "I just appreciate his intellect." Midnight stammered, fanning herself with her hand. "He's different. In a good way. And he's quite handsome. In a logical sort of way." Aizawa, ever the pragmatist, simply raised an eyebrow. "He's a student," Namuri. "Try to maintain some professional distance." Though even he had to admit, the kid was impressive. Meanwhile, in a more secluded corner of the staff room, All Might was in a deep discussion with Principal Nizu and Power Loader, the support course teacher. "Principal, that young man Midoriya," All Might said, his voice filled with concern. "His abilities, his intellect, it's almost frightening. And that talk about reclaiming humanity's potential, it's unsettling." Nizu sipped his tea, his smile enigmatic. "Frightening? Unsettling? Or exhilarating, Tashinori?" Midoriya-kun possesses a unique perspective, a vision that challenges the very foundations of our society. It is our duty to guide him, not to suppress him. Power Loader, his eyes gleaming with a mixture of admiration and apprehension, spoke up. "We need to keep the military away from him, Principal. If they get their hands on his technology, especially that exoskeleton design, it could change everything. Not just for heroes, but for everyone." Nizu nodded slowly. Indeed, Midoriya-kun's creations have the potential to reshape the world. We must ensure that his genius is channeled for the betterment of society, not for its destruction. And that, my friends, is why we must guide him carefully. The reactions to Izuku's performance weren't confined to UA. Across Japan, pro heroes were watching the sports festival broadcast with varying degrees of interest and other emotions. In her sleek, modern apartment, Mirko, the rabbit hero, watched the footage of Izuku's robotic contraption tearing through the obstacle course. Her ears twitched with a mixture of excitement and something else. That kid, she muttered, her crimson eyes gleaming. He's got some serious brains. Imagine what kind of weapons he could make for someone who can really use them. A faint blush colored her cheeks as she replayed Izuku's speech, his voice echoing in her ears. And that whole humans are back thing, that's hot. In a more traditional Japanese home, Ryukyu, the dragon hero, watched the broadcast with her family. Her usually composed demeanor was slightly flustered as she watched Izuku's intense gaze and listened to his passionate declaration. He has such a powerful presence, she murmured, her face warming slightly. And his dedication to science, it's quite admirable. Her younger sister giggled, noticing the unusual blush on the dragon hero's face. Out in the city, several pro heroes, including Death Arms, Kimui Woods, and MT Lady in her normal, human form, had gathered in a public viewing area to watch the sports festival. Death Arms, a staunch supporter of traditional heroism, grumbled, "That kid's got some crazy gadgets, but he's not a hero. He's a scientist. This is the sports festival, not a tech expo." Kimui Woods, ever the pragmatist, nodded thoughtfully. "He's got a point, Death Arms. But you can't deny, his technology is impressive. Imagine if heroes had access to gear like that. It could save lives." MT Lady, however, was less focused on the practical implications. Her eyes were glued to the screen as Izuku spoke, his words resonating with her in a way she couldn't quite explain. "He's different," she admitted, her voice softer than usual. "He's not like the other students. He's so focused, and smart, and kind of cute, in a nerdy way." She blushed, realizing she had spoken her thoughts aloud. Death Arms and Kimui Woods exchanged amused glances. "Looks like someone's got a crush," Kimui teased. MT Lady sputtered, her face turning bright red. "I do not. I admire his dedication. And his glasses." Back at UA, Principal Nizu was watching the various reactions with a knowing smile. He had seen this coming. Izuku Midoriya was not just a brilliant scientist, he was a catalyst, a force that challenged the very way people perceive the world. And as his teacher, Nizu found it all immensely gratifying. "He's certainly making an impression," Nizu mused, swirling the tea in his ever-present cup. "Just as I planned." The break eventually came to an end, and the students began to make their way back to the stadium. As Izuku rejoined his Class 1A companions, he noticed a familiar, irate figure storming towards them. It was Uraraka, her face still flushed with anger from her suspension. She pointed an accusing finger at Izuku. This is all your fault. If you hadn't shown off with your stupid robots, I wouldn't have gotten in trouble." Izuku sighed, a familiar wave of exasperation washing over him. "Your continued attempts to deflect responsibility for your own actions are illogical, Uraraka-san. Your suspension was a direct result of your disruptive behavior, not my performance in the obstacle course. You think you're so smart." Uraraka shrieked. "You're just a quirkless nobody trying to steal the spotlight." Before the situation could escalate further, Ida stepped forward, his rigid posture radiating disapproval. "Uraraka-san, your behavior is unbecoming of a UA student. Please refrain from further disruptions and allow the sports festival to proceed with decorum." Uraraka glared at Ida, then at Izuku, before stomping off in a huff, muttering about unfairness and stolen points. Izuku watched her go, shaking his head slightly. The human capacity for irrationality continued to fascinate and frustrate him in equal measure. But the sports festival was about to resume, and he had a feeling the next event would require his full attention, and perhaps the deployment of the XS-1 Goliath. The age of science was about to make its presence felt once again. The second event of the UA Sports Festival was announced, a Cavalry Battle Royale. The 42 students who had survived the obstacle course would form teams of 2 to 4. Each team would wear headbands with point values assigned based on their finishing position in the first round, with the last-place finishers starting at a mere 5 points and the first-place team, Izuku and Shinso, bearing the astronomical weight of 10 million points. The objective was simple: steal as many headbands as possible while protecting their own. The top teams at the end of the time limit would advance to the final individual battles. As the participants gathered in the designated arena, a large concrete platform surrounded by a wide expanse of artificial turf, Izuku approached Midnight, a thoughtful expression on his face. Her cheeks immediately flushed a delicate pink at his proximity. "Midnight-sensei," Izuku began, his voice calm and analytical, regarding the designated battle zone. "Are the participants restricted to the concrete platform, or is the use of the surrounding artificial turf permitted for movement and strategic maneuvering?" Midnight, trying to maintain her composure under his intense gaze, stammered slightly. "Yes, Midoriya-kun. The entire designated area, including the artificial turf, is in bounds." Her fellow teachers on the commentary platform snickered quietly, earning them a sharp glare from the R-rated hero. A small, almost imperceptible smile touched Izuku's lips, a smile that somehow managed to make Midnight's blush deepen even further. "Understood. Thank you for the clarification." He turned to Shinso, a strategic glint in his emerald eyes. "Shinso, our objective is clear: acquire maximum points while retaining our highly valued headbands. I have a proposition regarding our tactical approach." Their plan was audacious, and leveraging the element of surprise and Izuku's technological capabilities, they would take to the skies. Izuku's Papra's backpack, in addition to its manipulative arms and laser weaponry, possessed a set of experimental, high-output micro-thrusters, initially designed for rapid short-range mobility in zero-gravity environments. While their sustained flight capability in Earth's atmosphere was limited, it would provide a significant initial advantage. Shinso, meanwhile, would make his way towards their tank, the welded mass of robots from the obstacle course, which Power Loader and his team had thoughtfully, and perhaps with a hint of mischievous amusement, refitted with a new power source and a variety of non-lethal ammunition, including high-velocity rubber projectiles, sticky foam canisters, and even a limited supply of concussive airburst missiles. As the timer for the Cavalry Battle Royale began to count down, Izuku activated the micro-thrusters on his Papra's backpack. With a sudden burst of energy, he launched himself into the air, the 4 robotic arms stabilizing his ascent. He hovered above the chaotic fray, a prime target with 10 million points emblazoned on his headband, yet strategically out of reach for most ground-based teams. Shinso, with surprising agility for someone not focused on physical prowess, navigated the initial rush of students and made a beeline for their makeshift tank. He clambered into the makeshift cockpit, the refitted controls surprisingly intuitive. With a roar of its jury-rigged engine, the robotic monstrosity lumbered to life. The battle commenced with a flurry of desperate grabs and strategic maneuvers. Teams lunged for headbands, while others formed defensive formations. Todoroki Shoto, surrounded by a formidable team, unleashed a massive ice wall, attempting to protect their valuable points from the initial onslaught. From his aerial vantage point, Izuku began his assault. His laser pistols spat out focused beams of energy, not aimed at stealing headbands directly, but at disrupting the movements and formations of other teams. He targeted support riders, destabilizing their mounts and creating openings for Shinso's ground-based assault. Shinso, meanwhile, piloted their tank with a surprising degree of skill, its non-lethal weaponry proving remarkably effective. He unleashed barrages of rubber projectiles, knocking riders off their mounts and creating general pandemonium. And, with a distinct sense of déjà vu, he targeted Katsuki Bakugo, who was leading a furious charge towards Todoroki's team, and unleashed a concussive airburst missile. The non-lethal round struck the explosive hero squarely in the groin once again, sending him spiraling off his teammates with a frustrated yell. Todoroki's impressive ice wall proved to be a temporary obstacle. With a calculated shot from the tank's main cannon, Shinso launched an explosive sticky foam canister at the icy barrier. The resulting non-lethal explosion coated the ice in a super-adhesive substance, rendering it brittle and significantly hindering the mobility of Todoroki's team. Chaos reigned supreme in the arena. Teams scrambled, alliances formed and dissolved in seconds, and the air was filled with shouts of frustration and triumph. Izuku, laughing with a manic glee that bordered on scientific fascination, continued his aerial disruption, while Shinso, a wide grin on his face, expertly piloted their bizarre tank, wreaking havoc on the ground. As the clock ticked down, the leaderboard began to solidify. Despite being the primary target, Izuku and Shinso, through their combined aerial and ground dominance, had managed to retain their 10 million points while also snatching a significant number of other headbands. Todoroki's team, despite their initial defensive strength, had lost several key headbands and were struggling to recover. Bakugu's team, hampered by their leader's repeated groin-related incapacitations, were a chaotic mess. Nito Monoma's typically arrogant team found themselves consistently outmaneuvered and disarmed by Izuku and Shinso's coordinated attacks. When the buzzer finally sounded, the results were displayed on the giant screen. In first place, with a substantial point lead, Team Midoriya, Izuku, and Shinso. In second place, Team Todoroki. In third place, Team Bakugu. And in fourth place, Team Monoma. The crowd erupted in a cacophony of cheers, laughter, and bewildered applause. The sheer audacity and effectiveness of Izuku and Shinso's strategy had been both hilarious and undeniably impressive. On the commentary platform, Nizu was practically crackling with amusement, wiping tears from his eyes with a paw. Oh my, that was simply brilliant. Utterly unconventional and remarkably effective. Midoriya-kun and Shinso-kun, a truly synergistic partnership. Present Mike was beside himself. Did you see that? The flying laser show. The tank of terror. And Bakugu getting hit again. This is the most amazing cavalry battle I've ever seen. Even Aizawa couldn't suppress a small smirk. Efficient, if a little excessive. In the staff room, the reactions were equally enthusiastic. Snipe and Vlad King were once again replaying the footage of Bakugu's repeated misfortune, their laughter echoing through the room. Midnight, still sporting a faint blush, watched Izuku with a mixture of admiration and concern. He's so strategic, she murmured, and surprisingly ruthless when he puts his mind to it. Outside the stadium, the pro heroes watching the broadcast were equally captivated. Death Arms shook his head in disbelief. That kid, he's not even trying to be a hero in the traditional sense, but he's dominating the whole thing. Kim Yui Woods chuckled. He's using his brain, Death Arms. Something a lot of heroes could learn to do more often. MT Lady, her giant form looming over the cityscape, giggled. He's like a super smart, laser-shooting, tank-driving genius. I kind of love it. Mirko, watching from her apartment, let out a whoop of approval. That's how you do it. Forget fancy quirks, just blow stuff up. That kid's got guts and good aim. Ryukyu, in her dragon form, watched with a thoughtful expression. His intellect is truly formidable. He approaches these challenges with a completely different perspective. On Island, Melissa Shield and her father, David, were glued to the screen. Melissa, a brilliant support item designer herself, was awestruck by Izuku's ingenuity. Dad, did you see that? The way he repurposed those robots, the design of his flight system, it's incredible. David, a renowned scientist, nodded in agreement. He has a remarkable understanding of applied physics and engineering. Melissa, he's thinking outside the box in ways we haven't seen in years. This young man, he's going to do great things. Back in the arena, Izuku, still chuckling softly, clapped Shinso on the shoulder. A statistically significant victory, wouldn't you agree? Shinso grinned, a rare and genuine expression of triumph. Yeah, 10 million points and a whole lot of chaos. Not bad for a couple of science nerds. The remaining students, a mix of awe, frustration, and grudging respect, could only stare at the unlikely duo who had just turned the UA Sports Festival into their own personal, explosively entertaining, scientific playground. The final individual battles were sure to be interesting. In the dimly lit confines of a hidden bar, far from the cheering crowds of the UA Sports Festival, a gaunt figure with piercing eyes watched the broadcast on a flickering screen. It was Stain, the hero killer. He had dismissed the sports festival as a frivolous display of the very hero society he despised, but Izuku Midoriya's opening speech and his subsequent performance in the cavalry battle had caught his attention. He listened intently to Izuku's words about the stagnation of human potential due to the over-reliance on quirks, the lost age of scientific exploration, and the desire to look nature in the eyes and say, humans are back. Stain, a man driven by a rigid ideology of true heroism, found himself pondering. Is that it? He muttered to himself, his voice raspy. Is that the answer? Not the purging of false heroes, but a return to something more fundamental? This quirkless child, he speaks of a world I barely remember, a world where strength wasn't just inherited. Could I be wrong? Is killing the only way to change this corrupted world? Or could this boy's path offer a different kind of correction? He watched as Izuku, laughing with a strange, almost manic energy, celebrated his victory with Shinso. A seed of doubt, a rare and unwelcome guest, began to sprout in the hero killer's hardened heart. In a grimy hideout on the outskirts of Mizuta-fu, a group of individuals with unconventional appearances watched the same broadcast. Spinner, a man covered in lizard-like scales, leaned forward, his eyes fixed on Izuku. He talks about a world where everyone could be strong, not just the ones with flashy powers. That's kind of what we want, isn't it? A world where the strong don't just look down on the weak because of how they were born. Toga Himiko, her usual unsettlingly cheerful demeanor slightly subdued, tilted her head. He seems interesting. So smart. Maybe his vital fluid would tell me how the world used to be. A shiver of morbid curiosity ran down her spine. Dabi, his scarred face impassive, watched with a flicker of something akin to grudging respect in his blue flame-like eyes. He's got guts, I'll give him that. Going up against the whole hero world with just brains and some scrap metal. It's almost admirable. Almost. Compress, his face always hidden behind a mask, let out a low chuckle. Such a theatrical display, turning a sporting event into a technological showcase. He certainly knows how to command attention. A unique approach to societal reform, to say the least. Twice, his personality split and warring, muttered to himself. He's cool. No, he's a weirdo. He's got a point. Shut up, you. Science is the future. No, quirks are the best. His internal conflict mirrored the external chaos Izuku seemed to generate. This strange, intelligent boy was confusing. In the opulent shadows of a hidden lair, All for One watched the broadcast with cold, calculating eyes. He saw not a potential reformer, but a potential obstacle. That child Midoriya Izuku. He managed to sway young Shigaraki, to plant seeds of doubt in his mind. A dangerous element. His fascination with this science, it could disrupt my plans for a world ruled by quirks, by my power. He watched Uraraka's continued outbursts in the background footage. That volatile girl a useful tool, perhaps, to discredit this scientific upstart. Oh dear, the sheer petulance. The only thing eviler than me a teenage Karen. A cruel smile stretched across his face. I must keep a close eye on this Midoriya. His influence must be contained. Back at UA, in a private observation room, the big three, Mirio Togata, Tamaki Yamajiki, and Nijire Hato, watched the replay of Izuku's performance. Mirio, ever the optimist, grinned. Wow, that was amazing. He totally outsmarted everyone. And that flying robot thing was so cool. Tamaki, leaning against the wall, his usual anxiety amplified by the sheer spectacle, mumbled, he's so confident. Even without a flashy quirk. It's unnerving. Nijire Hato, her bright blue eyes sparkling with curiosity, watched Izuku's manic laughter after securing first place. He's so energetic when he's excited about science. And he's really smart. It's fascinating. A faint blush dusted her cheeks as she remembered his polite smile when asking about the arena boundaries. He's kind of cute when he's all focused like that. In a sterile, dimly lit room, Overhaul, his face still obscured by his plague doctor mask, watched the broadcast with cold indifference. Eri, huddled behind him, her small hands clutching his coat, peeked out from behind his leg, her wide, innocent eyes fixed on the screen. She didn't understand the complex words Izuku used, but the passion in his voice, the way he spoke about a world where everyone had potential, it sparked a tiny ember of hope within her. A world where she might not be just a tool, a source of pain. Back at UA, in the confines of his new living quarters, Tomura Shigaraki sat on his bed, a discarded science textbook lying open beside him. Izuku's words about reclaiming human potential had resonated deeply. For so long, he had been told that the world was broken, that quirks were the source of all suffering. But Izuku offered a different perspective, a path towards change that didn't involve destruction. He picked up the textbook, his normally twitching fingers surprisingly steady, and began to read about the fundamental principles of chemistry. Maybe this science thing is worth a try, he muttered to himself, a flicker of curiosity replacing the usual emptiness in his red eyes. Meanwhile, a few miles away, Toga, Dabi, Compress, and Twice sat huddled around a makeshift table, sharing a meager meal and trading stories. They were a ragtag group, bound together by their shared ostracization and their struggle to find a place in a world that often rejected them. They weren't villains in the traditional sense, more like outcasts trying to survive on the fringes of society. Toga, her usual cheerful obsession with vital fluid temporarily forgotten, spoke softly. That boy Midoriya. He talked about humans being back. Like we could be something more than just our quirks. It sounded nice. Dabi, nursing a cigarette between his scarred fingers, shrugged. He's got a weird way of putting it, but he's not wrong. We get so caught up in what our quirks can do that we forget what we can do without them. A different world it's hard to imagine. Compress, ever the showman, chuckled wryly. A world where everyone has a place, regardless of their peculiarities. A noble sentiment, though perhaps a tad idealistic. He exchanged a look with Twice, a silent understanding passing between them. Their lives, filled with hardship and rejection, made the idea of a truly inclusive world seem like a distant dream, but Izuku's words had planted a tiny seed of hope. Twice, momentarily coherent, nodded in agreement. Maybe he's right. Maybe there's a place for people like us in that world. A world where everyone can be okay. He paused, then added, but I still want to cut people. No, stop that. The group fell silent for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts, contemplating the possibility of a different future. A future where science, rather than quirks, held the key. A future where outcasts like them might find acceptance. A future where they might be okay. It was a faint hope, fragile and uncertain, but it was there, glimmering in the darkness. Back at UA, the break period had ended, and the students were preparing for the final event. Izuku, his mind already racing with calculations and designs, couldn't shake the feeling that his words had resonated with more than just his classmates and a few pro-heroes. He had glimpsed a flicker of understanding, a spark of curiosity, even in the eyes of those who walked a darker path. Perhaps, he mused, the age of science wasn't just about technological advancement. Perhaps it was also about hope. So, this was the end of part 2 of this series. Stay tuned for next part of this series, and if you like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.